Yes, representatives on behalf of Mr. Aitken have filed a formal request for pardon. My counsel's office has put together documents, and I've begun the review of the record and those documents, and I would suspect that I'll be in a position to make a decision on whether or not I'll intervene prior to Christmas.
Hi, David. How are you?
James, I'm doing wonderful. Happy Bill of Rights Day.
Hey, very good. Bill of Rights Day. I didn't even know there was a special Bill of Rights Day until you sent me an email about it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it was first made Bill of Rights Day, recognized as such, a proclamation by Franklin Roosevelt in 1941. But it actually dates back to, on this day, December 15th in 1791, the Bill of Rights was ratified. And this is a very important date, and while many of us are familiar with the Bill of Rights and the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and we know there's a preamble to the Constitution, surprisingly not that many of us know that there's a preamble to the Bill of Rights. And if I could just take 10 seconds, I'll put on my ant fryers here, and I'd like to read you the meat of that clause. It says, the conventions of a number of the states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire, in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. And in plain modern terms, what this truly means is that these are restrictive clauses on the government to prevent government abuse, and anyone trying to tell you otherwise is essentially offering a ridiculous, historically unsupportable argument, and they may as well say that this gives the Bill of Rights, gives the government the ability to restrict your speech or to force you to worship the way that it sees fit, or to search and seize without due process and probable cause and warrants, or any host of abuses. And so that really ought to put to rest anyone disingenuously arguing otherwise.
Okay, well, that's very interesting, and I think you've given us an education on that point. Like I said, I was unfamiliar that there was a day set aside for this, and I don't, and thank you for bringing that out. Now, we ran that little clip with the governor about Brian Atkins. You want to give us a little update on that?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Brian Aitken is a man who moved into New Jersey. He had legally purchased guns, and he moved to New Jersey, and he was in the process of moving from his mother's place, I guess, to a place of his own. And basically, there was an incident where he was going through a divorce, and the police came to check on him, and they found his guns, and they were in the trunk of his car being transported from residence to residence, as is legal, and they charged him with illegal possession, and he's been sentenced to 7 years in prison, and he's behind bars now. And essentially what's happened is that there is a movement among liberty activists and the people who love this man to get Governor Chris Christie to pardon him. Christie said, as was indicated in that video clip, that he will be making a decision before Christmas. And I'm glad you played it, because today is the day that they are asking for everyone to call Governor Christie's office. And if I could, I'd just like to give out the number. It is 609-292-6000. And the message is quite simple. It's, please free Brian Aitken. And again, it's 609-292-6000. So I certainly encourage everyone and all of your viewers to do that.
Okay, well, we shall do that. In fact, we'll put it up on, excuse me, we'll put it up on the screen here in a minute. So we're kind of running a little short on time, but I want to touch on Don King.
Yeah, this was a real strange story. He got popped at Cleveland Hopkins Airport, which is just up the road from me, and he had some ammunition in his carry-on. And he had, I guess, some .357 and some .38. He since said, well, he applauds the TSA for their diligence. How could they not find it with what they put us through these days? But the bottom line is, King having ammunition is almost a bit of a disconnect there, because this is a guy who was convicted of murder many years ago. He viciously just beat a man to death who owed him $600 from the gambling rackets that he was in on a bet. The cop who responded said the king was over him with a gun in his hand, and the guy's head was bouncing off the ground like a ball, and it was just sickening, the vicious brutality. And without much explanation, the judge basically, behind closed doors, changed it to a manslaughter conviction with lesser implications and lesser time served, but it still meant that King was a felon, being a prohibited person by federal law to have the ammunition, except for the fact that in 1983, then Governor James Rhodes of Ohio issued a pardon based on petitions filed by a curious number of prominent anti-gunners, including Jesse Jackson and Coretta Scott King. The latter being someone who partnered with Sarah Brady in the Brady campaign. And of course, we all know Jesse Jackson's anti-gun stance. And King was in for his wife's funeral. No one wants to add to his problems in a time of grief, certainly. But by the same token, I think that the point to be illustrated here is that these are, number one, basically privileges and immunities that the rich and famous and the connected to the politically powerful have that the rest of us don't have. I mean, here we are, we're getting thousands and thousands of people all over the country asking for clemency for Brian Aitken, and yet a couple of these prominent people can write a letter to the governor, and he sees which way the wind is blowing, and that this is going to be good for him politically to play ball with this. And you have a person that, you know what, based on the crime, and I'm glad to see Mr. King has turned his life around and that he's a successful man and a prosperous man and apparently does some good now. I don't think that break would have been afforded to me or to you. Right. The fact that prominent anti-gunners in his corner like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson et al. Are part and parcel of this, and they don't say a word about his being armed, but they're against us being armed, seems to me a disconnect and not more than a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah, well, that's something we should go into. I'm kind of running short on time. I just want to make a remark about your room. The Christmas tree looks lovely. You got that beautiful fireplace over your shoulder there. And when you see the show, you will see that we inserted a halo just above your head.
Oh, you're making me laugh. You're hurting me, James. Thank you.
Okay, see you again next week.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.